This video is a part 2 to analyzing the differences between North Korean and South Korean idols, so please check out the first part before watching this video. The link is in the description. Likewise to the first part, this video will focus on the visual presentation of the Moranbong band and BLACKPINK. But unlike the first part, we will focus more on the historical, ideological, and cultural understandings of the idols. Two songs from both Moranbong and BLACKPINK will be compared with each other. The songs from Moranbong are 수령님은 영원한 인민이 되야, which in English translates to Our Leader Forever, the Son of Our People, and 우리는 당신밖에 모른다, which again in English translates to We Will Follow You Only. The BLACKPINK songs are How You Like That and Lovesick Girls. Keep in mind when you are watching that the two Moranbong music videos are set in the same location, whereas the BLACKPINK music videos are completely varied in their locations. To start with, we shall watch 10 seconds of each song. Starting with the Moranbong band, the idols are presented in a traditional musical venue, along with an audience, musicians, theatrical lighting, screens and props on set. The theater they are performing in is likely to be one of Pyongyang's many cultural theaters, however I'm unsure of which one it is specifically. For an audience accustomed to highly produced music videos, this style of presentation may seem awkward and strange, but keep in mind that North Korea has a generally low economic ranking, and is to certain extents heavily protectionist from outside influence, especially technology. US sanctions against North Korea might also play a role in this. This means, however, that North Korea does not have the resources for a thriving media industry, and has culturally retained traditional pre-21st century understandings of musical presentation. In the first seconds of the visual opening, we can see the official flag of both the DPRK and the Workers' Party of Korea. And whilst it is hard to see in the shadows, we can also see the insignia of the North Korean Air Force. Already this suggests that the song and the visuals are an expression of the country and military through the lens of the North Korean government, who essentially owns the band. What is more initially striking about Moranbong's appearance, however, is the display of what I believe is the MiG-19 fighter jet. The MiG-19 fighter jet being a variant of the MiG-15 and MiG-17 fighter jets, used during and after the Korean War by the North Korean Air Force. The fashion of the idols is also the ceremonial clothing of the North Korean Air Force, which can be reflected in the predominantly male audience wearing the same type of bomber jacket. This would give us the hint that this performance is a celebration of the North Korean Air Force and more generally the North Korean military. Women can also be seen in the audience wearing the traditional clothing known as hanbok, which is clearly defining of some understanding of gender roles in North Korean society and portrays a sense of cultural pride in Moranbong's performance. The femininity portrayed in the fashion of the idols specifically is that of their skirts. However, the musicians in the background can be seen wearing trousers akin to traditional Soviet military uniforms. So clearly when it comes to military fashion, there is a greater overlap of masculine and feminine norms. In terms of aesthetics, the screens show a range of artistic images. Notably, the image of traditional Korean houses upon a rising sun is portraying the almost mythical birth of Kim Il-sung, the first supreme and eternal leader of North Korea. The image is then followed by a large expressive portrait of Kim Il-sung depicted upon a red background. The red, of course, here being symbolic of Kim Il-sung's revolutionary political thought, which was heavily grounded in Marxism-Leninism, socialism and/or communism. A similar symbolic icon can be seen on the idol's bomber jacket, portraying both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. Either side of Kim Il-sung's portrait are the images of orchids, known as Kim Il-sungya, orchids named after Kim Il-sung, and are the national flowers of North Korea. These particular flowers are ritually used in commemoration of Kim Il-sung and are heavily ingrained into the aesthetics of North Korean propaganda. Almost all of the artwork depicted upon the screens is already well-established symbols of North Korean propaganda. In fact, the performance itself even has Kim Il-sung flowers and water fountains at the front of the stage, adding to the already depicted aesthetic seen on the screen. In the visuals of Moranbong's We Will Follow You Only, the current supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is venerated in a similar fashion upon the screens. with emotional scenes of Kim Jong-un up close with soldiers and military commanders alike. The main difference between the venerations is that the idols are mourning Kim Il-sung for his past life, whereas the idols are celebrating Kim Jong-un for his achievements in the present. Now, before I talk any more about Moranbong, let's observe BLACKPINK and start making some comparisons. BLACKPINK's presentation highly emphasizes the individual dynamic and emotional state in a variety of exotic settings, with locations ranging from studio settings to literal infrastructure out on the streets. The expressive nature to which encompasses the idols provides a message to the audience of absolute freedom of expression and freedom of individuality. This contrasts quite heavily, of course, in comparison to the rather controlled nature of Moranbong, who are limited in what they can sing about, the ways in which they dress, and emotionally express themselves. The movements of Moranbong show a repressed form of dancing in respect of Kim Il-sung, who is the center of attention, whereas the dancing in BLACKPINK shows individual control and empowerment of one's body at the center of attention. Moranbong also show off little skin compared with BLACKPINK, due to concepts of sexual degeneracy in North Korean society. We can observe that through modes of fashion, symbolism, beauty, and locations, the South Korean idols are made to be dissimilar from your average person and elevated to a status of celebrity. Through their celebrity status, we see them as models, expressions of beauty, expressions of success, and expressions of liberal individual empowerment. The BLACKPINK idols are moderately defined through artistic means to depict a spectacle of unique femininity, whereas Moranbong are portrayed to be almost indifferent from the military, the men in the audience, and the North Korean population at large. They are merely part of a greater musical ritual that discourages individuality in favor of collective honoring of those above in the hierarchy. There is still a honoring aspect to BLACKPINK's presentation, however, it is a form of self-honoring, honoring of their image, their fashion, their beauty, their narrative, and their emotions, always being at the center of the visuals. There is no perceived audience, no musicians, and no leader portrayed above them. Rather, it is less about the music and more about the exoticism of the individual. The self-honoring, combined with the stylized settings which are merely physical presentations of the idol's perceived emotions, is what ultimately gives rise to this kind of K-pop aestheticism and exoticism. If you watch the two BLACKPINK music videos with no sound on, it is like watching a combination of cinematic storytelling and a art show. It provides the viewer with a sense of knowing them personally, as if each scene gives an insight into the almost dreamlike lifestyle of these idols. The visuals essentially aim to create a parasocial relationship with the audience. However, the ultimate driving force behind the presentation of BLACKPINK and idols alike are the portrayals of perceived raw emotion and dancing. It appeals to the very natural feelings of youthfulness, the fears of growing up, the integrity of love and relationships. These emotions are typically presented through the idol's physical actions, either through singing, crying, being close with someone, smashing something, throwing something, or running. But also these emotions can be displayed through symbolic means such as burning certain objects or through lighting and weather conditions. The idols fundamentally dominate all factors of the visual presentation, and anything other than the idols are simply extensions of the idol's persona. As well as appeals to emotion, there is also a form of sexuality expressed, especially in the flexibility of the idol's abilities to dance. However, it's not to be compared with Cardi B's expressions of sexuality. The sexuality expressed by BLACKPINK is still a very conserved form of sexuality that still abides by East Asian standards of feminine elegance and innocence. Moranbong does also have unique forms of feminine presentation. However, most societies outside of North Korea do not place such an emphasis on the militarization of women. Any form of sexual expression is notably repressed in Moranbong's performance, in favor of feminine empowerment through the lens of a disciplined, strong military woman trope. So it's harder for Moranbong to actually appeal outside of North Korea, whereas BLACKPINK specifically appeals to universal femininity, or at least to a form of femininity that can exist in secularized liberal societies. I would argue, however, it is more so the blur between music, entertainment, art, femininity, emotion, liberal values, and all other factors involved in BLACKPINK's presentation that ultimately allows them to appeal to a worldwide audience. Moranbong, on the other hand, deliberately limits itself to a North Korean audience. Whilst emotions are certainly appealed to, they are not the emotions of the idol's individual struggles, but rather they are the emotional struggles of a nation, a people, and a cause. Such values of emotional appraisal, however, are channeled through into the appraisal of the leaders who represent the revolutionary national spirit of the people. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un are the true idols. The Moranbong idols are merely assets to the powers above them. The same way BLACKPINK idols dominate all factors of their respective music videos, it is the North Korean ideology of Juche and Songun that dominates all factors of Moranbong's respective music videos. Everything from the idols to the audience to the aesthetics and to the theater itself exists to serve the ideology of Juche passed down from Kim Il-sung's hereditary line of leadership. The sorrowful singing, the synchronized movements of the idols, and the constant appraisal from the audience also reinforced the ritualistic collective consciousness of the North Korean totalitarian psyche. Creativity and expression is inseparable from the power of Juche. BLACKPINK, likewise to Moranbong, is still ritualistic. However, BLACKPINK reinforced the consciousness of the liberal psyche to pursue individuality and consumerism. It is only the North Korean population who are accustomed to such forms of propaganda that will truly feel a connection to what Moranbong represent. Therefore, Moranbong restricts itself from appealing to a worldwide audience, which it does not intend to do anyways. Although nothing seen in BLACKPINK's visuals can be interpreted as political in comparison with Moranbong's hyper-political visual symbolism, BLACKPINK's appearance still relies on its audience to exist within a system of liberalism, capitalism, and individual consumerism, as Moranbong relies on its audience to exist within a system of Juche. Whilst K-pop generally might seem just like an overspill of South Korea's pop culture wave, it should be worth knowing that the K-pop industry has a well-purposed origin and serves as an economic probe for South Korea's global influence and sustainability as a nation. South Korea after the Korean War was profoundly struck by poverty, and the post-war Syngman Rhee government avoided modernization efforts largely as a result of government corruption, too much spending towards the military, and beliefs that South Korea would return to the status of a semi-colonial state if it embarked on trading relations with its former colonial ruler, Japan. In 1961, South Korea underwent a coup led by Major General Park Chung-hee, who feared that if modernization efforts were not implemented, a more powerful North Korean state could reunify the Korean peninsula. Upon Park Chung-hee assuming power, he revoked South Korea's protectionist economic stance and invested heavily in modernization efforts and in export-orientated economics. South Korean modernization all came at the extent of people losing particular political freedoms and civil rights, however. Under Park Chung-hee's rule, young people were socially discouraged from engaging with foreign subcultures, as it was believed to be socially degenerate. Men could be arrested for having long hair, and women could be arrested for exposing their navel, which is now a common look for female K-pop idols. The explosion of the K-pop industry in 21st century South Korea is to a great extent the result of such social suppression, which is now being unbridled in moderation. South Korea remained a largely authoritarian, closed-off nation until the 1987 election, which sought the victory of Roh Tae-woo as president of South Korea. The following year, the 1988 Seoul Summer Olympics ushered in a significant amount of foreign cultural influence to South Korea, and the nation was put on the world stage for the first time since the Korean War. The international foreign influences of musical genres such as hip-hop and American pop music would play a role in South Korea's later musical shift away from trot music and towards pop music. In May 1994, an economic report was made revealing that the 1993 Jurassic Park film generated foreign sales worth 1.5 million Hyundai cars. The shocking realization that pop culture was able to generate as much, if not more money than usual consumer products, commenced the South Korean government to radically embark on its own exportation of domestic entertainment industries. In 1999, President Kim Dae-jung allocated $148 million into South Korea's cultural ventures. Such interests of cultural exports included domestic music, film, cosmetics, food, and fashion industries. Economic and political changes within South Korea in the 90s also helped establish the groundworks for a pop culture wave to thrive. The formerly state-controlled film, music, and television industries shifted towards a private enterprise system as a part of the political liberalization of South Korea. To this day, the Cultural Ministry of the South Korean government is responsible for the budget and subsidization of the K-pop industry. Skip ahead a few years and BLACKPINK was established in 2016 to reinforce the K-pop industry's growing global influence. As of today, each BLACKPINK idol is endorsed by international luxury brands worth billions of dollars and star in commercials ranging from Samsung to Adidas to Kia to a Chinese strawberry yogurt company and to many more.
The Pepsi Black. No sugar, no regrets.
What's interesting is that many of the commercials they appear in have a canny resemblance to their styles of music videos. Whilst BLACKPINK certainly do not represent anything political, that does not mean that they are not ideological. BLACKPINK is still a part of a self-fulfilling capitalist network that aims to bolster the status of corporate globalization and consumerism. As I discussed in my last video, BLACKPINK is not overtly ideological in its music videos, however subliminal messaging is used to alter the mindset of its audience towards behaviors that encourage individual consumerism. Whilst BLACKPINK in their music videos are portrayed as being free-spirited individuals, when we observe the bigger picture, we can see that they are ultimately assets to global capitalism. The global influence of BLACKPINK and K-pop at large helps South Korea as a nation gain international attention and portrays the country as a hub for liberalism, stability, global investments, and business. Moranbong, on the other hand, are clearly politically and ideologically involved, being assets of both the Workers' Party of Korea and its national ideology named Juche. North Korea was generally more economically prosperous compared to South Korea after the Korean War due to well-planned economic development and investment from the Soviet Union. Music in North Korea since its post-war days never really underwent any radical change like South Korea, and remained largely orientated towards the genres of Korean folk and orchestral music. Only since the founding of the Moranbong band in 2012 has music in North Korea altered slightly. As of today, Korean culture in North Korea has remained largely homogeneous, with minimal foreign influence, unlike South Korea, which has undergone westernization. The North Korean economy has also remained centrally planned and done little to experiment with economic liberalization. This certainly seems bizarre from an outside perspective. However, Juche ideology emphasizes economic and cultural self-reliance against foreign imperialism. The word Juche was first coined in 1887 from translations of German philosophy, but was popularized by Kim Il-sung in his address to the nation in 1955. Kim Il-sung outlined the three ideological pillars of Juche ideology. These pillars are Chaju, meaning independence in politics, Charit, self-sufficiency in the economy, Chawi, meaning self-reliance in national defense, and Suryong, which was later added meaning leadership. Whilst not a part of the original three pillars, the introduction of Suryong justified Kim Il-sung and the Workers' Party of Korea leading the will of the people. Juche itself, in simple translation, literally means self-identity, subjectivity, self-reliance, and/or autonomy. Ju means power or master, and Che means physique, integrity, and/or essence. Juche ideology arose from North Korea's political shift away from the Soviet Union after the death of Stalin in 1953. Juche ideology stresses the importance of Songun, which is North Korea's military-first policy. The policy is derived from the belief that North Korea is perpetually on the brink of war with the United States and must be ready at all times to engage in warfare or suffer the consequences at the hands of American imperialism. This is why a militarized presentation is of utmost importance to the image of Moranbong. Juche ideology is fundamentally an ascension of Marxism-Leninism and Kim Il-sung thought, adopted to the realities of the Korean people in the modern day. Juche ideology is still socialist in principle, however is implemented more so to justify the rule of the Kim dynasty over North Korea. The lyrics in Moranbong's "Our Leader, Forever the Son of Our People" reflects the Juche-imposed gratitude North Koreans have towards their eternal leader, Kim Il-sung. Our leader, forever the son of our people. Throughout his whole life, for the people's sake, his sole mission, our leader fully devoted to all and everything. Through his commitment to give glory to us all, our leader, he has become like the sun to us all. The lyrics reflect the cultural beliefs surrounding Kim Il-sung's cult of personality and his deification. The fact that Kim Il-sung is symbolized as a sun reflects the eternal godlike mythos regarding his leadership and legacy. Kim Il-sung, born in 1912, ascended to rule in what we now know as North Korea in 1948. Prior to his rule, he had been a nationalist resistance fighter who had participated in guerrilla warfare against the Japanese Empire in Manchuria throughout the 1930s and 40s. It was from his early guerrilla activities in Manchuria to which he first established a reputation for himself. Upon his rise to leadership, Kim Il-sung adopted a strongman Stalinist approach to his character. Unlike the Soviets, however, Kim Il-sung officially adopted, or rather returned, to a ruling system of hereditary lineage, which was the ruling Confucian tradition in the historical Joseon dynasty, which existed from the 14th to 19th century. The hereditary system was continued in North Korea after the death of Stalin in 1953. Kim Il-sung feared that revisionists like the new Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, who criticized Stalin's rule, could attain positions of power in North Korea and do the same thing to him. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Kim Il-sung's post-Stalin strongman persona as a savior of the Korean people from Japanese and American imperialism continued to be forged. However, it would only be until the 1970s, from which propaganda experts invested heavily in establishing the occult following of Kim Il-sung as a leader of godlike manifestation, who is not only a savior, but a guiding father of the Korean people and the Confucian family order. North Korea's economy by the 1970s was beginning to slow down, and this is believed to be the reason why Kim Il-sung's cult of personality was officially established, in order for the government to prevent any doubts in the North Korean system and to solidify loyalty to the Workers' Party of Korea. This system of leadership contrasted quite profoundly with South Korea's non-hereditary authoritarian democracy. The legacy of the fusion of Stalinism with Confucianism can be easily observed in Moranbong's presentation, from which both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un are an extension of the family. Whilst this appearance is highly politicized, it is also cultural. The almost sacrificial devotion to one's leader, as depicted in Moranbong, was a highly uplifted value in the conduct of soldiers in the Joseon dynasty, who were following a Confucian principle of absolute obedience to those above in the social hierarchy. Confucianism in the Joseon dynasty also emphasized the well-being and collective consciousness of the family as the main structure for society and leadership to flourish simultaneously. The 5 bonds of Confucianism are ruler to ruled, father to son, husband to wife, elder brother to younger brother, and friend to friend. Familial relations to those above in the social hierarchy were the foundations for establishing social harmony and collective obedience in the Joseon dynasty and in other Confucian dynasties alike. Think of it essentially like this. From having a well-organized family, you had a well-organized village. From having a well-organized village, you have a well-organized society. From a well-organized society, you have a well-organized administration, and from a well-organized administration, you have a well-organized nation. In order for this collective philosophical system to work, one has to abide to hierarchical relations on a family level, and then continue that mindset into society at large. Confucianism is also deeply ingrained into the structure of the Korean language. However, to bring this all back to Moranbong, the Confucian psyche of collectivism over individualism can be observed in the structure of their appearance, with the incorporation of the idols, the musicians, the military audience, and the supreme leaders into one collective familial structure reflects the Confucian order of social harmony and the strong bonding connections between different sectors of North Korean society. Together, it all represents a unified sense of cultural, political, and social integrity. Juche ideology also emphasizes the Confucian ideal of familial collectivism with the notion that the nation is a body that is sustained by the organs who represent the family and the cell sustains the organs who represent the individuals. Now, when observing BLACKPINK, like that of politics, we might be led to believe that BLACKPINK represents something cultureless. But this is far from the case. BLACKPINK ultimately represents a culture of modern liberal individualism, westernization and Americanization, altogether influenced profoundly by a system of profit-seeking capitalism and a culture of modern consumerism. Ironically, Moranbong has actually more in common with traditional Korean musical styles, whereas BLACKPINK and other K-pop groups alike are largely an ascension of 90s American boy bands and girl bands. The lyrics from BLACKPINK's How You Like That emphasize the idols' individual determination to forge their own destiny and to counter their haters in a competitive capitalist environment. I crumbled before your eyes, hit rock bottom, and sunk deeper. To grab onto the last bit of hope, I've tried to reach out with both my hands, and again in this dark place, light up the sky. While looking into your eyes, I'll kiss you goodbye. Laugh all you want whilst you still can, because it's about to be your turn. Now look at you, now look at me. The lyrics create the dichotomy of the jealous hater against the flawless icon of capitalist success. Now I'm sure BLACKPINK does receive a fair amount of hate, however I usually only see praise for them online. Nevertheless, even if the hate is minimal, the lyrics of self-honor and self-glorification are used to remind even the most loyal of fans that BLACKPINK are above them and represent the pinnacle of feminine prosperity under a capitalist system. Does BLACKPINK, however, represent Korean culture in any way, other than just simply having Korean faces and singing in Korean? You could argue that Confucian influence in South Korean society has encouraged the utilization of girl groups and boy groups, compared to in the West, where they have largely faded into non-existence, with a few exceptions. But given the fact that the idols usually come to represent a rejection of Confucian norms in their music videos, I don't think that would necessarily be a good example. All BLACKPINK idols wear affluent modern fashion, and even when hanbok is worn in the last scene of BLACKPINK's How You Like That music video, it is depicted in a commodified modern style, unlike with Moranbong where the hanbok is legitimately worn. If we were to replace all the BLACKPINK idols with people of other nationalities and ethnicities, not much would significantly change in terms of culture, other than not simply being Korean and not singing in Korean. However, there is one aspect of BLACKPINK that can be associated with a historical Confucian tradition, and that is in regards to the makeup and facial beauty standards of BLACKPINK that are largely unique to East Asia. The female beauty standards of the Confucian Joseon elite, known as the Yangban, used a variety of natural ingredients to lighten and make their skin smoother. One ingredient was that of chodu, which was a mixture of powdered red beans and green mung beans, which together were used as a form of lotion when mixed with water. Such an appearance was attributed with the Confucian virtues of natural innocence and purity for women. Within the Yangban, it was believed that people, especially women of the Yangban, should desire to maintain a strict standard of beauty, as it reflected the harmonious environment Confucianism aims to achieve in society. There were also socio-economic reasons for the women of the Yangban to maintain such beauty standards, as it separated their elitist social status from that of the Joseon peasant classes. By the same token, Moranbong also perpetuates a similar expression of beauty. This, I believe, is the only thing BLACKPINK and Moranbong have in common with each other. In conclusion, both Moranbong and BLACKPINK manifest in the ways in which they do due to a set of systems they exist under. Confucian-influenced totalitarian Juche and Western-influenced liberal capitalism. Ideological and cultural influences are both present in the conditions of which the idols are displayed in, reflecting the conventional values of their respective target audiences, and both bands fundamentally assist a top-down system of power, however both to far different extents.